Cool. I mean, today we've got the pleasure of hosting Sri Nazir Razak. I'll just do a brief introduction of Sri. Sri was previously the CEO of CIMB, was there for quite a number of years, uh, and uh, and then became its chairman, having worked his way up from being employee number 69. So basically pulled himself from his bootstraps up to the top. And just some crucial context, Sri is also the younger son of Malaysia's second Prime Minister, Tun Abdul Razak Hussein, and now is very busy after having stepped down from CIMB. And now he's got two things going on. He's launched Zack Capital and co-founded Ikhlas Capital. Welcome, Sri.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we start, maybe we'll just go through some housekeeping. Could we just make sure that everyone remains muted throughout the call? We encourage you to turn on your cameras because that would be pretty nice to make it more engaging. And then save your questions for Q&A. We've got about 10 to 15 minutes just scheduled for Q&As at the very end. Yeah, so welcome, Sri.
Thank you.
Um, Sri, I see from your Instagram stories you've been quite busy lately. You've been maybe even busier than ever, busier than how you've been since CIMB. You've got your ASEAN Business Investment Summit. I see you've been golfing around. You were in Jakarta about 2 weeks ago, and hosting the former CIA director just about 2 days ago. How's that been like
Well,
post CIMB?
no. I'm not as busy as I was at CIMB. At CIMB, I couldn't play golf. So I retired from CIMB in 2018 and set up this PE firm.
Yeah.
But I kind of made an arrangement where I only spend half my time on the PE firm. The rest I can do other things. So I've kind of been busy with Zack Capital, which is my family office. So we invest in all sorts of stuff. And then this kind of pro bono work for the government, lah, and the main thing being the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. So I chaired the ASEAN private sector this year. So that's been a bit consuming, but that's almost at the tail end now.
Right. And I mean, in midst of all the business, I mean, of course, you've had half your time being allocated for uh, non-Z capital stuff, but you still managed to write a book about in 2021, I think, What's in a Name? I've got it right
Yeah.
here. It's very difficult to get my hands on this book. I had to get it secondhand on Amazon. And I see that you've got a fellow Bristolian who gave an endorsement as well, Sri Andrew Sheng. It
Mm.
happened to be the Bristol common ground that connected you to him.
I know it was more, he was at Bank Negara, so he was in the financial sector.
Right. Well, today we've got the theme of navigating uncertainty in your career. As students, we're entering a world that is continually getting more uncertain as the day progresses. But before we get into the thick of it, we'd like to get to know our speakers a little bit in our Keeping Up with the Bristolian series. So maybe you could take a bite at revealing who's Sri Nazir Razak and what's shaped him.
Gosh, that's a long story. You got to buy my book for that. Um, no, I was, I kind of, I said in my book, you can only, deal with the hand that you're dealt with, lah. You know, that's the only one you can, or rather you have to play that hand. So I had a kind of my hand was partly, being born into privilege. And that has its pluses and minuses. And so one of the minuses was you got dispatched to a strict boarding school at the age of 13. So that's quite formative, lah. 5 years at an English boarding school. In those days, it was all boys. So it's a bit of a weird youth in a way. And Bristol was the first time I came across girls. Actually, to be honest, it was all very exciting because all boys school, and you arrive at Bristol. I was in Churchill Hall, and I had girls living above me. It was so exciting. And I spent 3 years at Bristol. And again, that kind of was sort of shaped me as well. And I spent a year at Cambridge doing a postgraduate straight away after Bristol. And in those days, I did economics and politics, and and development economics in particular was very, very left.
Yeah.
So when I went home, the first thought was to basically join the government. That was my plan. But when I came back, my brothers told me and said, "No, that's not a great idea because the world has changed since my father's time, and really the Malaysia is all about the private sector now with privatization, etc., etc." And so I didn't know what to do, so I ended up joining a bank. The bank was meant to be a stepping stone, but actually turned out to be a career. So I spent 30 years there, and I think somehow or other, I think the boarding environment kind of brought, I think, leadership skills out. And I built that over many platforms, including the sports field and the boarding house and so on. And I think I sort of became quite an institutional person, which means that I kind of developed deep loyalty to institutions that I'm part of. So even when I joined CIMB, at that time CIMB was a very small shop. We had a total of 69 employees, as you mentioned, and
Mm. Yeah.
and at that time, I had to. We had these inter-merchant bank games, so I had to play every sport. And believe it or not, I'm 5'6" or whatever, and I represented CIMB in basketball. Of course, it was a complete disaster. So I played everything for CIMB, so that's kind of a reflection of the commitment to the organization that I work for, and it very quickly became a mission for me to rise up the ranks in CIMB and try and make CIMB the best that it can be. I mean, there are a lot of stories about how, of course, during a career, there are periods of unhappiness and you are tempted to leave and so on and so forth. But overall, the agenda, my career agenda was to build CIMB up from, this small merchant bank in Malaysia. And eventually, Alhamdulillah, we were very successful. We
Yeah.
became number one in Malaysia in investment banking. Then we used that platform to then buy banks right across the region. So, at its peak, CIMB was under my jurisdiction. CIMB was about 45,000. So we went from employee 69 to about 45,000 staff, and operating in all markets across ASEAN. Yeah. So, I guess that's the kind of, when I retired in 2018, after that, I set up my own the private equity and whatnot. So that's a brief outline of my career. And I think, as I said, a lot of it was kind of building on leadership skills that I picked up. And I think I picked up a lot during the UK time in Bristol
Mm.
too. Bristol was very cosmopolitan. I
Yeah.
went to a very English boarding school. I was when I arrived, I was the only foreigner in my house. So 60 white guys and me, which is quite weird. And then so in Bristol it was very cosmopolitan, and I had a good mix of friends. I ran the Malaysia Singapore. Those days it was called MSSA. I don't know if it still exists now. Malaysia Singapore
Yeah.
uh, Society. Those days, Students Association. I think that's
Yeah.
the
That's right.
full name. Is it still exist?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It's
Yeah.
still in existence, yeah.
Yeah. So when I joined, when at that time, there were probably about 30, 40 Malaysian students, Malaysian Singapore students. But the MSSA had, during my time, we had 120 members. So it became like
Wow.
a fun dining club. We had we were majority white at one stage. So that was quite unusual. But it was a fun club to be part of. And so, I made a lot of friends beyond the English. I made a lot of Malaysian, Singapore friends, and beyond that. So I think the friends you make, or the kind of other university that you attend, which is the University of Life, is just as important as the academic part.
Yeah,
So it's people you
definitely.
meet, the people you learn from, very, very important, and how you respond to situations and during your studies is very formative lah. So I would encourage you guys to really go out and try and find yourself, as it were. and build those skill sets for the future.
And is that something that you'd sort of give, if you had to give one piece of advice to 20-year-olds in university these days, would that be it? Find yourself.
Yeah, you've got to find yourself. And I think, I kept saying that one of the most powerful traits of a professional, if you like, is the ability to understand his or herself. If you know yourself well, what you're good at, what you're not good at, then it's easier to mitigate. Yeah. It's easier to double down on what you're good at and mitigate what you're not. I mean, for instance, before long you get a managerial role, then it's about forming a team. And when you form a team, there's no point forming a team of clones. You form a team of people who are not like you, people who have skills that you don't have, maybe even smarter people than you. And that's how you form teams. And if a leader is judged by the success of his or her team, then it's the ability to pull together a diverse group of teammates. That is power to me. Yeah, and that's my biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone.
Cool. I just want to ask you a little bit about Oundle because I see that it comes up quite often, but I, I I don't really get a glimpse of what Oundle is like. Well, I think in general people view the British private school as an institution. It's very Hogwarts-like. The smoke and mirrors. It's grand, exclusive, old world traditions. Was there a lot of pompousness, a lot of pomp and circumstance, really, back then?
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, I'm sure boarding schools are not what they were, but for me, it was great because I'm born with a silver spoon or whatever. So I arrived at boarding school. First thing I had to do was chores. And
Mm.
when you're kind of 13, you just arrived from Malaysia. There is no forgiveness. They just throw you in the deep end. I think my first chore was to wash everyone's milk bottles. Those days you serve milk
Okay.
in bottles, so you have to wash them and then so they can resell. My second day chore was to basically sort out the laundry. I had 60 boys, 60 pretty dirty boys, and you had to literally sort out their laundry, from put the shirts together, the underwear together, and all. One of the most disgusting things I've done in my life. So that kind of woke me up to the reality that you know it was a very very humbling beginning to life at boarding school. And then in that setting you face up to racism, you face up to bullying and everything
Um,
like that. So it really tests you.
and I'm sure the hallmark of British private schools, the 6-day week, strict uniform rules. Do you think it would have
Mhm.
that new stimuli really shaped your life and possibly your worldview?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I got there, somehow or other they ingrained it to me that this is your world. This is your world, and my agenda was try to be head boy of my house. So I was, I planned it for 5 years. One day I'll get to the top of this damn house. So, even
That's
though I'm
cool.
a foreigner, right? So that would then, and I got there, but it was hard work.
Yeah. And was there like hustings and elections?
No, no, no. You're just appointed by the the
Right.
the, the housemaster. Yeah. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no democracy there. The
Yeah.
the
It's a bit different
institution will
to
decide.
the style of my boarding school as well. But now we'd just like to move towards Bristol now because we're a bit short on time. You mentioned you were in Churchill Hall. So did you participate in the annual rugby game against Wales?
No, I tell you what happened. For some reason, I couldn't decide whether wanted to play football or rugby. So I got into the first team of both in my first term, which actually is not
Right.
it's not right. You cannot play two sports. And then I was thinking, oh, which one shall I stay in? And actually, fortunately, it got sorted out for me because I was playing rugby for the first team, and we played the rugby team, one of the rugby teams in town. And I remember distinctly, I was running with the ball. I passed the ball, and literally about 5 seconds after I had passed the ball, some big guy from town picked me up, threw me in the air,
Late
and then
tackle.
dislocated my shoulder and everything, and that was the end of my rugby and football career, because you're out for months after that.
And you said you were a winger, right?
Yeah.
That must have been tough. Um, I think I've talked to a lot of Bristolians, a lot of Malaysians in Bristol, and every time they keep bringing up the fact that you were president of MSSA. Maybe you could just share one piece of experience, one event that you've organized in MSSA that's quite impactful, left a mark in your mind.
Well, I think the it was a bit of a risk to open it up. And I remember the kind of, that first day, that find a friendly first year day. I don't know if you still have that.
No, we don't.
And and basically, at the student union, all the clubs have to kind of set up their booths. So we then decided, look, we're going to go for it. So we actually managed to, as I said, get about 100 over members, and it was quite extraordinary because, why would most people join the Malaysian society, right?
Yeah,
So that kind of changed the complexion of the Malaysian society, and it became a lot of fun because there were a lot of parties and so on. So the camaraderie was good.
that's very nice to hear. It's sort of like a reflection of what our Malaysian society is today. We've got, I mean, but now it's about 95% Malaysian, and we try to dig towards the international crowd, but it's a bit difficult.
Well, if you offer them good makan, it's okay. We used to have this restaurant called Malacca on White Ladies Road,
No
and
more.
the MSSA had kind of discounted deals, so that was part of the enticement.
Yeah, we still have those type of deals going on today, but no more Malacca. And we just like to zoom into CIMB now, but
Hmm.
particularly two events. So it's part of the theme, navigating uncertainty. And I mean, in the book you mentioned two events. I'm just gonna pick out two events. Um, CIMB being the target of RHB's hostile takeover, and CIMB having to underwrite the Bakundam financing, both of which were sort of like, had political undertones, involved strong arming of CIMB, but it must have been quite a difficult time to manage, personally. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I mean, it certainly was. And I think that Malaysia has changed, firstly. And it was a different time. When RHB, they wanted to take over RHB, they basically told me and my chairman at that time, said, if you don't step aside, you will be removed. And then we kind of sat down and said, look, in the end of the day, we've got to do what's right. And so I actually thought that we made a decision that would kill our careers. And the book will recount why we survived.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's always been, you got to, in the end of the day, you got to go to sleep. If I can't sleep at nights, if you're bothered about things that you should not have done. We just stuck to our guns. In the case of Bakun, that was I was not CEO then, when Bakun happened, and I didn't have to make the call, but there was a strong feeling that if we didn't go ahead with the deal, we'd get into deep trouble with the political masters.
Yeah.
And that's just the way things were those days. Those days there was an era of directed lending, a lot of political interference, and all that. And Alhamdulillah, after the Asian financial crisis, a lot of things changed. I wouldn't say they changed permanently, but we had a golden era of GLCs and business sector at the beginning of this century, for about 15 years. Those were great years.
I've also received a lot of questions because we had a Google form filled up, right? People had to fill up to come on to the call,
Yeah.
and a lot of them asked, what key moments define your leadership in CIMB? Would you say it's the target of RHB being the hostile takeover? Would that be one of those?
Well, it depends what you mean by define. I mean, I think what was definitive was transformation. and transforming CIMB from an investment bank to a universal bank. Firstly, we transformed from a merchant bank to an investment bank before
Yeah.
they were investment banks, right? We created this whole, license investment bank model for Malaysia, and then we converted to universal bank, and again we created this model of Malaysian universal banks.
Yeah.
So we were, we definitely were standard bearers of, finance in the region at that time. So I would say it's more the transformation of CIMB that defined my career. Now, of course, to be able to transform, I had to survive, and
Yeah.
those sticking to my guns and so on and so forth helped me survive.
And in your leadership, you mentioned you sometimes people were too deferential, especially towards the later parts of your
Yeah,
leadership.
I mean, I think there's some logic to this, not sort of having fixed tenure for leaders in government, in business, and all that. And I found that, after running CIMB very successfully for a very long time, there were problems. I mean, I was kind of the face, but even more than just the face. It really was me, and I felt that my dominance was going against what my agenda was, which was to institutionalize and create this strong institution. And I felt that people were bypassing process.
Mm.
People were coming to me, and I was making decisions and imposing it. My board wasn't questioning me already. I was too powerful. So it was getting dangerous, and that's why I said in 2014, I said, it's time to hand over. So I handed over to Zafro,
And so
another
when you reflect,
another Bristolian.
yeah, another Bristolian. Just to reflect, I mean, if you had to reflect back, uh, do you think there was a way to sort of reduce this power distancing, or it was just an inevitable extension of the logic of who you are as a
Yeah, I mean, I
person?
think if you're maybe today, if you're more conscious about it. I mean, Jamie Dimon's been in JP Morgan for yonks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Malaysian culture is a bit more difficult. People are more, deferential to hierarchical and so on and so on. Maybe it's a bit more difficult. That's all. I think if you're conscious about it, it can be done.
And do you think that's a cultural trait of Malaysians?
It's just a cultural trait of Malaysians not to speak up so much. But I think that if you are conscious about building an institution and creating the guardrails and all that, it can be done. It can be done. But organizations need different types of leaders for different times. So I had created this very dictatorial kind of CEO for myself because we needed to move very fast.
Mm.
You can't deliberate, make slow decisions when you're making so many. We bought 12 banks. Yeah, you got to make decisions, you got to buy, then you got to make people decisions very, very quickly. You put through process and all that. Cannot be done. I mean, today CIMB couldn't that M&A, fuel acquisition, expansion, and all that couldn't be done today with rules, regulations, checks and balances. And also, I couldn't do it today for sure. You need to do something like that when you're young.
And so do you think the regulatory environment sort of stems that? I mean, do you think
For sure.
a lot of the regulatory, yeah?
For
Well,
sure. And I'm glad we did it when we did it. Today, you couldn't do it.
moving towards ASEAN now, because I see you used ASEAN as a platform for many of your things. I mean, CIMB's growth is, I think, on the ASEAN regionalism, right? You've got ABIS as well and ASEAN centrality. What is, what was your view of ASEAN?
No, I mean, I
Why was
bought
it a growth
into
engine?
ASEAN very quickly because, Malaysia is 32 million, ASEAN is 700 million. We need economies of scale, especially in banking. Banking is a scale game. You just imagine, say those days we used to have a brand ambassador in Nicole David. I mean, if you have scale, then you defray the costs of Nicole David over much bigger institutions, so you can do a lot more. At that time, after Nicole David, I was actually going to take on Jose Mourinho at that time. And we could afford those kind of things because of scale. And I find it very exciting to be part of kind of building ASEAN, because beyond the business, our region needs ASEAN. We need it as a political platform. We need it as a security platform. We need it to be this non-aligned group of countries in not just in today's world order, but in the past as well. So I'm very much a ASEAN believer.
And I sense that you don't really envision ASEAN turning into an EU sort of like pan-federalism.
No, I mean, I think even the Europeans don't want EU anymore. It's too much. I think that the day that of this I mean, economic nationalism is back with a vengeance. EU cannot backtrack because everything is locked in. But clearly, EU is having problem with migration today. And I think the right model is obviously somewhere between the loose coalition of ASEAN and what EU is today.
We've also received a question from the registration form, and I think it ties in with the discussion right now. What industry trends are you most excited about right now? Do you see any patterns emerging?
Well, I mean, it is the era of tech and digital. So I think the most exciting investments are in established companies with kind of strong cash flows, etc., that are taking full advantage or leveraging on AI in a big way. Like you look at what YTL is doing, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big trend. I think when you get into ASEAN, then the growing ASEAN middle class, the consumer market, that's an exciting trend. And a lot of spin-offs from that. I mean, we invest at Ikhlas, we invest in consumer, logistics, finance, and tech. Those are our four big sectors, and rightly so.
Right. Because you were CEO of CIMB and then its chairman for about 20 plus years throughout the whole tenure. So you've got quite a deep insight into what the Malaysian consumer was like, or rather the ASEAN consumer was like. What was the financial health and how did it evolve as the economies grew?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at ASEAN, one of the first things to note is we learned a lot of hard lessons from the Asian financial crisis. So financially, ASEAN governments are much stronger shape, much more prudent, and I think in that way they've also managed their consumer base much better. You look at even Bank Negara, they kind of ring the alarm bells as soon as consumer debt to GDP reaches a certain amount. So they do that very quickly. So I think ASEAN in general is in pretty good shape. And one of the beauties of ASEAN is also the central banks, the regulators, and they exchange notes a lot, and that's been very helpful in keeping the region resilient.
Thank you. So now we're just gonna move towards what was one whole chapter in the book, which is about 1MDB and how you managed that very difficult time. Of course, it was very uncertain, right? You had so many differing loyalties. You had tensions pulling on one side, you had your CIMB loyalties, your brother on the other side. How difficult was this for you?
Very,
This
very,
time?
very, 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 very difficult. And you and even today, sometimes if you look at the current situation, um, sometimes I regret. The moments of regret, lah, because especially the severity of what's happened to my brother. You question whether you did the right thing, because some people on that side of the fence have accused me of being very much party to this ending, right? So it's difficult, of course. Your family loyalty, and then there are a lot of people in between, right? Like my mother was around. She doesn't understand finance and all that, so she was very confused as to what was going on.
And I mean, you talked about friendships at the very start of our talk. Did you see a lot of these friendships that you accumulated throughout CIMB slowly start to fray away once 1MDB unfolded? You step down from CIMB.
Mm, no, no, I wouldn't say so. I mean, the CIMB alumni were very tight. And I would say, people who worked for me for many years, I think there's they just our relationship is because of who I am. Yeah, they don't. It doesn't matter to them whether what my political situation or whatever is. So that's not an issue. It's more, I think maybe on the kind of friend side, some people showed their true colors. That's okay. You can expect that. I think that going into the kind of you know life after CIMB, I was quite clear. I said these are my true friends. These are the fair weather friends, and so long as the true friends actually turned out to be true, that was all that was important to me.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Now we're just gonna move away from 1MDB. Now it's towards a bit more more reflective. What has been your proudest accomplishment
I
to
think
this date, Tan
I
Sri?
think CIMB is my proudest accomplishment. If you look at CIMB, and I always say that success of a leader is when the organization is successful without them. And then I was very concerned that when I leave, CIMB would, get into difficulty because, I had, if I hadn't, that would have meant that I didn't build an institution. So if you look at CIMB, after I left, it continued, went from strength.
Yeah.
Some leaders like the idea that you leave and then the organization goes downhill, and then they say, "Oh, because I was so good that the organization cannot go on without me," that kind of thing. But I was very proud that CIMB has gone from strength to strength, and today, we've had what, 4 CEOs after me,
Yeah.
and it's still doing very well. So, and if you look at CIMB platform today, yes, we were probably early in our game, building this ASEAN platform. In some ways, when we completed the platform, and ASEAN didn't become an economic community, we were kind of all dressed up and nowhere to go. But today, as ASEAN integrates more and more, CIMB has a very, very valuable ASEAN platform.
A question from the registration form was, why choose banking and not politics at the start of your career?
Well, banking, because my brothers told me that you go to banking and it gives you a good overview of the corporate sector, of the business sector. Then you can decide what company you want to join. That was why I joined banking. As I said, it was a stepping stone. Politics was impossible because my brother was already in politics, and I kind of, it would have been difficult to have two of us, particularly when our kind of philosophies are a bit different. We would have clashed. So and that would have been terrible.
And you didn't want a case of the Miliband's happening.
Not so easy, lah. Not so easy in the Malaysian context. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so now we've right on time now. We're gonna open up questions to the floor.
Sure.
If you've got a question, could you please raise your hands? We're gonna stop spotlighting now so that people can actually come into your view, Tan Sri. So if you've got questions, go ahead. You can ask it verbally or you can text in the chat. Yeah, I guess. Oh yes, Riyad.
Assalamualaikum, Tan Sri. My
Salam.
name is Riyad. I study mechanical engineering. I'm a final year student. My question was, so you're around for like you're the reason why CIMB became how it was today. And it took a lot of mergers of smaller banks to achieve that. But right now, our banking industry is so saturated in the sense that financial institutions are quite big and established already. So is there even more room for mergers? Because for Malaysian banks to compete with international banks in the first place, they're going to need more reserves. And I understand that, partly is also because of our currency, that our value isn't as high as, for example, like Singapore. Um, is there any other way to, bridge this gap? As the way I see it, the only way to solve it is if our banks have, more reserve, more money. Is there a way to compete internationally?
Well, I think we are competing internationally. I think that's why, if you look at the region today, when deals are done, CIMB, Maybank are very, very competitive. And you know, when you look at, say, standing, when you look at the deal and you compare the offerings of CIMB and, say, HSBC or whoever, it's very competitive in terms of, especially when you're borrowing or you're raising bonds in local currency. We have the deposit base that the HSBCs and the like don't have, right? So I think that banks have to continue to probably continue to scale up. So the likes of CIMB and all that may need to merge again, merge some more, not necessarily in Malaysia. And then secondly, I think so far as if you take the consumer view, then I think it's okay because there are a lot of emerging digital banks right across the region. So I think they will be more competitive when it comes to, sort of smaller companies, etc.
Okay, thank you, Tanzri, for the question, for the answer. Sorry.
Yeah, Victor, was it? Yep.
Yes. Hi, Dan Siri. I'm at class right now, so I'll speak a bit quieter. But the question I have is, what do you think is the single most important skill to be successful as an employee or engineer in the future, so we can succeed in the future?
No, as I said earlier, I think the most important thing is to basically know what you're good at and what you're lousy at. And sometimes when you look at situations or projects or whatever, they require skill sets that you don't have. So then it's a question of how to get it, whether through creating a team or creating access to information or just partnership. That's the most important thing to me lah. I found I used to do this thing where I used to always look in the mirror. I used to say, what am I good at? And my second question was, can I do the job that I'm doing today? And at some point in 2014, I asked myself that question and said, no, it's not. So that's why I retired. And you also as a person will evolve over time. So don't assume that if you decide you're good at this and you're strong at here and you're weak here, that it remains the same at all times. You have to continuously update your own perception of yourself.
Thank you very much, Tansiri. I'll try to understand myself better.
That's I'm actually quite curious. How can you compare how fulfilled you felt when you were in CIMB and how fulfilled you feel now with Zach and Ikhlas?
No, I think it's different time of my life. I'm very happy with, I couldn't do the CIMB job. My time had been over. If you read the book, they basically, after the government changed for whatever reason, then, they asked me they kicked me out of CIMB in 2018. But the reality was I had already made up my mind. I was going to leave in 2019 anyway, because I felt my time was over. Banking also changed a lot. Banking has become a lot more boring than during the heydays because of compliance, regulation, and all that. So I'm quite happy to not be in that role anymore. And today under the with my portfolio today, I can do a lot of different things. Yeah.
So would you prefer the banking industry to be around the 2000s to 2007s, that type of risk profile, as opposed to now?
I mean, we had a good time now. That's the way it was. But obviously, that kind of model got into the global financial crisis, so there was a reason to tighten up. I mean, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't go back into banking in some fashion, but I think my current range of activities is fine.
Thanks, Tan Sri. Yeah, Matt.
Hi, Tan Sri. Uh, my question is that many Malaysian students abroad grapple with the question of whether they should return home after graduating. In the context of Malaysia's ongoing brain drain, do you view it as a national obligation for them to come back and contribute locally, or can their impact be equally meaningful even if they build their careers overseas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to build a career overseas. I think you should want to come back at some point and contribute to the nation. But working overseas, getting experience, making yourself, stronger, and then coming back is also a good way to contribute to the nation, because there's certain skill sets you can't learn in Malaysia. So don't feel guilty if you don't want to work overseas for a few years. I think that's fine. Don't tell your parents I said that, but
Hi, Tasri. Just had another question. You mentioned there's some skills that you can't learn in Malaysia. I mean, in Malaysia. So, what kind of skills would that be?
well, I mean, I guess some cutting edge skills are not available. I mean, if you want to go into you want to go to cutting edge AI, you've got to go somewhere else, right? You got to go to maybe Canada or maybe Silicon Valley or maybe China, right? You're not going to get it in Malaysia, as an example.
Following on to that, I think, what do you think is the future of Malaysia's R&D sector?
R&D is very broad. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of conversations about AI. You're talking about that. I think DeepSeek has demonstrated that you don't need to have such huge pockets to be able to innovate in the AI space. But as it stands now, I don't think we have that talent pool. Maybe down the road, when our data centers are up and we have some competitive edge, maybe we can pull talent. But talent, for Malaysia to be really successful in this space, I think we need to be much more open to foreign talent, right? So combining foreign talent and local talents. I think that's the name of the game. You can't have this kind of very, very restrictive immigration policy and then expect to have the best brains.
Do you think Malaysia has the environment to nurture innovation through our own local talent, rather than having to rely on foreign talent?
Well, we have talented people, but if you look at innovation, what are the building blocks for innovation? There are lots of things, including capital, and this is a frustration of a lot of startups in Malaysia, is access to capital. I think the way we've been a bit slow in building the venture industry, right? Then people like Grab and all that, they felt they had to go to Singapore to grow or to develop. So and then is in terms of the kind of competitive landscape also, whether decisions are made based on pure merit. These are issues that we're still struggling with. I personally think there's too many government presence in business, and governments just don't make decisions in a purely commercial way.
Tan Sri, do you think the bottleneck is, I mean, of course, is capital. Sorry, with regards to innovation, do you think the bottleneck is more capital, or do you think it's Malaysia's culture of, risk aversion? People would rather get the golden handcuffs, work in a GLC instead of, start their own business.
I think I've met a lot of young people who actually are more are braver now, and I enjoy seeing these young people give it a go. But unfortunately, in Malaysia, there's also things like we don't really we we don't we're not very kind on failure. Yeah, if you look at some of the successful businesses, entrepreneurs, right? They've gone bust a few times. You find that in Malaysia, you go bust once, it's very difficult to get up again. The banks will not look at you, and there's this stigma and all that. So I keep telling the government, and we need to celebrate failure also. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, even in GLCs now, one of the things that I've said it publicly, my fear is GLCs have become too risk averse, because we went through a bad period when politicians asked GLCs to account for losses, right? You invest in one company like Fashion Valley. I don't know, some of you read. Just because Khazanah invested in Fashion Valley, then Khazanah got beat up. Well, when you invest, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, and you must be able to evaluate people on a net basis. All the good they did minus the not so good they did. Is it net very positive or not? If it's very positive, then you appreciate that. You don't just pick on the fact that they made one or two losses and then you punish them for that. If that was the culture when I was running CIMB, I would be dead long time ago. Because throughout my tenure at CIMB, I made a lot of good decisions, but I also made bad ones. Net, I made a hell of a lot more good decisions. But if you pick on you hang me for the bad decisions, then I wouldn't be around today.
And is that a side effect of Malaysia's political culture of sort of
Yes,
populism?
I mean it got bad after the politics got bad, and then politicians decided to use business or use GLCs and all that for their own political, scoring political points. I got quite upset with that many times.
Okay, we're going to take about 2 more questions. Yeah, Sharifah.
Assalamualaikum, Tan Sri. Can you hear me?
Salam, yes, I can hear you, Sharifah.
I'm in my second year doing politics right now. So I want to ask more about ASEAN, I think. And maybe you're not as invested into ASEAN right now as you have if you're not like really involved in CIMB anymore. But do you think that because right now ASEAN is a very like dynamic and fast pacing and like moving towards development, like all the countries are having a very good economic development as well. Do you think it's a challenge or an opportunity for like the Malaysia, like banking industries or like commercial industries to invest in it, or like it's becoming like more of a backlash with our industries?
No, I mean, ASEAN is disappointing in terms of the ASEAN economic community that was articulated in 2007. We had this ASEAN Charter that said by 2015 it will be a single production base, free movement of people, and so on and so forth. Then they didn't get there, mainly for political reasons and so on. But now, given the fragmentation in global economies, the US tariffs, etc., over the past year during my chairmanship of the ASEAN private sector, we have clearly seen a surge in I guess interest in ASEAN, especially from within ASEAN. So we're pushing, ASEAN companies are pushing very hard for more intra-ASEAN investments, more intra-ASEAN trade, etc., more collaborations across border and all that. It's actually quite an exciting time that way. And we're trying to figure out how to find our own right model because we're a loose coalition of nations. How do we then create the right platforms for businesses to thrive? We're loose coalition of nations. We're not like a European Union. We're not a customs union, right? We don't have free movement of people. But how do we create? What kind of policies should we put in place so that more business can be done?
Yeah, and I have a follow-up questions for that. And within ASEAN itself, we have like the ASEAN Regional Forum and like APEC and like more like fragmented kind of um, institutions within ASEAN itself. Do you think that it's making it harder for us to join, like lead the commercial industries of ASEAN? Or is it like helping us to focus in each of those fragmentations?
No, this not so clear in your question, but I think ASEAN today can take advantage of the world fragmentation, right? Because all of us have been so spoiled by the size of the US accessibility of the US market, we've taken it for granted. So now we've got to find new markets, and the most natural new markets is to trade amongst ourselves. And currently, intra-ASEAN trade is only about 22% of total trade, whereas EU is 60%. Yeah, so there's so much more that we can do with each other, and that's what that's the thing we need to focus on.
Thanks. So we've got two people
Alright,
wanting to ask questions. So yeah, I think we can squeeze in two more questions. Anjali?
Hi, Tan Sri. Thank you for your time today. Earlier you touched a bit about bringing in foreign talent. So my question would be, how can the local talent in Malaysia adopt the desired foreign skills that you're talking about?
No, I think it's about, it's just like, the Premier League. When I still remember when they first opened up to foreigners, people were jumping up and down, right? But really bringing in foreign talent is also part of the reason of doing it is to raise the benchmarks for local talents. If we just compete with our own, we'll be weak. Right, we must bring foreigners in as teammates as well as competitors so that we raise our game. But of course, these kind of policies always come with caveats to make sure that there are enough opportunities for locals and so on.
Sorry, and Mira?
Hi, Tan Sri. I'm doing second year in business management in Bristol, and I just wanted to ask, how do you think Malaysian banks can reach higher potential in terms of using Islamic finance and compare it to banks in Singapore, for example, like DBS, because of their asset under management? How do you think Malaysia can become better in terms of finance?
No, Islamic finance, it's my view and not the most popular view, is that Islamic finance needs to go through a renaissance. We need to relook at Islamic finance and go back to, the true tenets of Sharia. It's more about transparency, disclosures, fairness, etc. This whole thing about circumventing interest, to me, is a bit of a joke. Because you got this whole industry of people producing truckloads of legal documents, all in the interest of just circumventing interest. But yet the product, when you really break it down, is still interest bearing. If you really want true Islamic finance, it's about risk sharing, it's about merchant banking, it's about private equity. That to me is the true Islamic finance. And if that's the way, I think if we should relook at how this whole Islamic finance game, and Malaysia has a tremendous edge in Islamic finance. We were pioneers of Islamic finance. Our kind of Sharia platforms are the most credible in the world. But at the moment, we're kind of stuck in this zone where, I think Islamic finance in a way has been found out. Where is the uplift from, just mimicking conventional finance products?
Thank you, Tan Sri. Very
Thank you,
sensitive
Tan
of your
Sri.
time. So we'll just wrap this up with a quick fire, just 6 questions that I've got prepared. So I'm sure you're familiar with the quick fire. I'll just ask and then the shortest, closest answer in your mind, just shout it out. So first, what's your favorite food?
I'm goreng.
What's your favorite hobby?
Today, golf.
A book that's changed your view on life?
Death of Gentlemanly Capitalism.
Right.
That
I
changed
think you
my life.
mentioned it.
Philip Auger, yeah.
A book that you're reading right now?
What It Takes. This is a book by my partner, Gita Wirawan. This is the best current book on Southeast Asia. Get a copy of it. It's superb.
A partner in Ikhlas, was it?
Yes. He's the former trade minister of Indonesia. And he's also a visiting fellow at Stanford. It's a fantastic book.
Cool. Ethan Wanderers or Chelsea?
Today, Chelsea, like Ethan Wanderers, were all 60s.
And most important question, what's your favorite BG song?
Oh, no, it's too embarrassing.
Yeah, we
It's
don't
called
really listen to BG.
Love You Inside and Out. None of you will know it at all. So, none of you.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri, for your
Guys,
time.
hey, thank you. And, I keep promising the university that I'll go back for a visit. So they were quite upset because, I gave ASEAN talks in Oxford and London and not Bristol a few months back. But next year, inshallah, I will come back and visit the university again. Been a long time.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri. Is it okay if we just grab a picture?
Sure.
Can everyone please turn on your cameras? So we'll post it on Instagram so show that we've got Tan Sri.
Well, people are in their classrooms.
Yeah, because it's about 11 a.m. right now in the UK.
Okay.
Then you've got the picture. Yeah, you can take the picture. We'll give people about 5 to 10 more seconds and then we'll take the picture. Okay, Kaelan, you want to take the picture now? Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Tan Sri, for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. See ya.